I'm here today to announce two wonderful new publications from Os Justi Press, my publishing house. Maybe you didn't know that I had a publishing house. That's okay, a lot of people don't know that. I haven't actually been doing much with it for a few years. I started it in order to bring out reprints of out-of-print Catholic classics. And I did 25 or 30 of those books. I also printed a missal for young Catholics. I did a new edition of Guardini's Sacred Signs. You can find all of these at osjustipress.com and also at Amazon. However, I've decided to revitalize the publishing house, and I've got some great ideas going forward. One of them is a new series called Os Justi Studies in Catholic Tradition. And I'm here to announce to you the first two installments of that series, copies of which just arrived here today. So the first book is called, you can see that here, I hope I can get this camera to work better, Disputed Questions on Papal Infallibility by John P. Joy. This is a marvelous book. It's the best book on the subject I've ever read. I found it persuasive, convincing. It was the best account I've ever seen of Vatican I, the teaching of Vatican I. Let me just read to you the back cover. Actually, that's probably the best way to get into this. The First Vatican Council solemnly defined that the Pope is infallible when he speaks ex cathedra, that is, from the chair of St. Peter, which is the chair of truth. With this definition, the question as to whether the Pope is able to speak infallibly at all has been finally settled. Since then, theological discussion has centered on these subsidiary questions as to how often and under what conditions he does so. Here there are two errors to be avoided. The very real phenomenon of creeping infallibilization, according to which almost every utterance of the Pope is regarded as being at least practically infallible, and the equally dangerous tendency to interpret the conditions for papal infallibility so restrictively as to render the dogma almost meaningless. Paradoxically, these opposite tendencies seem to be almost equally widespread among Catholics in general. One constantly encounters the idea that the Pope has spoken infallibly only twice, that is, in defining the dogmas of the Immaculate Conception and Assumption of Mary. And yet it is also everywhere assumed, indeed often by the same people, that no Pope could possibly teach anything false in any of his official teaching on faith or morals. As is so often the case, the truth lies in between. Dr. John P. Joy, an expert on the magisterium, has chosen the format of the scholastic disputation in an effort to bring some measure of greater clarity to the topic. The first question concerns the extension and limits of papal infallibility in general. The second question concerns particular cases of papal teaching, including Evangelium Vitae, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, Humanae Vitae, Quanta Cura, Exsurge Domine, and Unam Sanctam. A number of essays further develop key points, including what we are to make of Pope Francis's change to the Catechism on the death penalty. This succinct study brilliantly clarifies some of the most controversial and confusing questions in Catholic ecclesiology. And that's true. When I read this for the first time, I read the manuscript, I thought, finally, someone has done it. Careful analysis using Vincenzo Gasser's Relatio. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. I can't recommend it too highly. And he is not a minimalist or a maximalist on this question. This is how I would say it. He's a maximalist where one ought to be a maximalist, and a minimalist where one ought to be a minimalist. So as regards, for example, how many times popes have taught infallibly, how many times have they exercised their extraordinary magisterium, he says it's happened quite often in history, just as Gasser says. And he gives concrete examples, Dominus Jesus, Evangelium Vitae, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, Veritatis Splendor, and so forth. It's really fascinating and well worth reading. Let me show you that cover again, Disputed Questions on Papal Infallibility. Good. And then the other book that I've just published is Father Reginald Marie Rivoire's Does Traditionis Custodes Pass the Juridical Rationality Test? Okay, this is Os Justi Studies in Catholic Tradition number 2. Let me read the back of this one to you. On July 16th, 2021, Pope Francis published Traditionis Custodes, an apostolic letter that aimed at a drastic reduction of the use of the traditional Roman liturgy. In a letter to the bishops published on the same day, the Pope explained at length the reasons for his decision. The harsh measures, in tandem with the violent and accusatory tone of the accompanying letter, have aroused consternation among the faithful who are attached to the usus antiquior. The Responsa ad dubia, issued in December of 2021 by the Congregation for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, so far from clarifying matters, only intensified the growing dismay and debate. The inaccuracies, difficulties of interpretation, and problems of concrete application of Traditionis Custodes have meanwhile raised many questions among canonists, pastors, and institutes whose proper law binds them to the liturgical forms of the Latin tradition. The present tract, written by canon lawyer Father Reginald Marie Rivoire, undertakes a careful canonical reading of these documents, chiefly from the point of view of their juridical rationality. It is well known that rationality is one of the essential characteristics of a legal norm, such that, strictly speaking, an irrational norm is not a norm and does not bind. The tract first considers the legal status of the documents, then the affirmation at the heart of this whole legal apparatus and its raison d'etre, namely, that the liturgical books promulgated by Paul VI and John Paul II are the sole expression of the lex orandi of the Roman Rite, and finally, the way in which numerous fundamental principles and precepts of canon law are undermined by the new norms. This is by far the most detailed and devastating critique so far of Traditionis Custodes. That is to say, if you take it seriously as a document, this shreds it from a canonical point of view. It's really a brilliant and breathtaking study. And the author knows what he's talking about. He's remarkable. He's a graduate of the Institut d'études politiques of Paris. He has a doctorate in canon law from Santa Croce in Rome. He's defender of the bond and promoter of justice at the Ecclesiastical Tribunal of Rennes, and he teaches canon law in various religious institutes. So this is not, a lightweight figure. This is somebody who fully, you'll see when you read it, how much he knows his stuff. They don't seem to have people like this working at the Vatican right now, I can tell you that. So this work here, and this work as well, kick off this new series from Os Justi Press, and I hope you will check them out, pick up copies. They're both available from Amazon, but also, especially if you like to avoid Amazon, from my website, osjustipress.com. You can order them there, check out, and you could do the whole thing there. And also, there are ebook versions of these. On Amazon, you can get the ebook of this one, but to get the ebook of this one, you have to go to osjustipress.com. So, thank you very much for your attention, and happy reading.